What's up, guys? Welcome back to our week-long road trip across the Virginias. Today we are doing something that's been on my bucket list for a very long time. This is a region of West Virginia with these super crazy thin rock formations jetting out of the ground. We're right by Seneca Rocks, West Virginia, of course home to Seneca Rocks, which we'll be checking out in a few days' time. But today we're at Nelson Rocks, which is essentially like its little brother down the road. And this has a very cool technical Via Ferrata trail that climbs to the summit of the rock formation. I am so excited and a little bit terrified.
Nelson Rocks is actually in an amazing location, less than 5 miles from the highest point in West Virginia and surrounded on 3 sides by the Monongahela National Forest. These are 2 things I'll highlight thoroughly a few videos from now. The mountainous site features 2 parallel rock fins made of Tuscarora sandstone that overlook Nelson Gap. The area is privately owned and is accessible via a tour with NROCKS Outdoor Adventures. The Via Ferrata built into the landscape is one of just 3 on the east coast of the United States and often considered one of the best in the country. It was constructed in 2002 and easily its most unique feature is a 150-foot high, 200-foot long bridge that connects the 2 northern fins of Nelson Rocks. I remember seeing pictures of this years ago and it's what really pushed me to come here, but more on the bridge later. To backtrack on what exactly a Via Ferrata is, it's an activity that combines rock climbing and scrambling involving clipping a metal rail that's bolted into the mountain for safety. This makes it impossible for you to fall as long as you do as instructed. However, that doesn't mean you can't get hurt. A simple misstep or not using your carabiners properly could result in a genuinely serious injury.
So I'm going to climb up here a little bit. As you guys can see, eventually I'll get to a point where I cannot continue unless I transfer to the next cable. One hand, one carabiner at a time. I take my hand, I move a carabiner to the next cable, and then I go back with the same hand, remove it, put it back on the next cable. So that's what a safe transfer looks like.
Everyone in my group seemed to do pretty well though, and I specifically wanted to bring that up because no one had done a Via Ferrata before. Note that if you're inexperienced in doing these, that's absolutely fine. And while we're on the topic of our group, I just wanted to point out that it was so fun getting to meet everyone. I'm hardly ever a fan of tours, but with this I felt that it was 100% necessary to have a guide, plus everyone was highly supportive of one another and extremely cooperative. And this makes sense as we were all kind of coming from the same place, being that this was a first time experience for all of us. Now since I've just introduced the activity and scenery, allow me to run through things step by step from the second you arrive and including particular highlights of the Via Ferrata. NROCKS Outdoor Adventures is situated in a valley wedged between all of these mountains, which was already a beautiful welcome sight. You'll want to head inside their main building to check in roughly 20 minutes before starting time, which for us was 9 in the morning. Now would probably be a good time to mention that on average your tour will last about 4 hours, though for us it was closer to 5.5. It's really going to fluctuate greatly depending on the speed of your group and if anyone decides to participate in an extreme optional section towards the end. Your guide will introduce themselves and collect everyone's name before you get into your harness and put on a helmet. And I was pleased to see that they had helmets with GoPro mounts attached as well, which is great for content creators like myself. Technically the helmets didn't need to come on just yet. There is actually 15 minutes worth of hiking trail to get to the start of the Via Ferrata where you don't need to wear it. But anytime after, it's imperative to have it on in case of falling rocks, since for most of the experience you'll be right up against these fins. Initially what had surprised me was that there wasn't any warm-up to ease into the climbing. It got intense straight from the get-go, which in a way I sort of preferred as it allowed me to get into the swing of things a lot faster. There wasn't much of an opportunity for anxiety to kick in, you were just kind of going for it right away. If there is one thing I absolutely will not sugarcoat, it's that this will be pretty terrifying if you have a fear of heights. I'll tell you, I'm not super comfortable with heights myself, so there were like 5 or 6 parts that really pushed me outside my comfort zone. Quite a few of those were these extremely narrow paths you had to take along the sides of the fins that didn't even involve climbing or scrambling. It's just so scary since you have to watch your footing, making it impossible to ignore the drop off to the left.
Holy crap. That part freaked me out a little bit.
Looking down?
Yeah, just so thin.
This is probably the part of the Via where we're on like the thinnest ledge. It's way thicker on the other side, but we have to go through a notch to get to the other side, and that part's pretty exposed.
One of my favorite sections, but also one of the most terrifying, was when you climb up the first fin and turn a corner, which exposes all the rock formations in close proximity.
This is what you were talking about? This looks crazy. Holy shit. Okay, now my heart is pounding, because look at this. Are you kidding me? I just stepped on that thing.
It was absolutely awe-inspiring and something I hadn't exactly seen anywhere else. I mean, you could make an argument for it having similarities to other areas in America, but the difference between these fins and other formations you may have seen elsewhere is that these are very, very thin. But you won't have much time to admire how truly unique they are at first, as you'll be focused on surviving this corner. I didn't get a lot of video footage that captures just how terrifying this was, but it was definitely a contender for scariest part of the tour. The iron rungs are more spread out here than normal, and when you're trying to maneuver your way around rock walls, not to mention this was still pretty early on in the tour, I literally could not think straight. It calms down after this point with some easy rock scrambling up to the base of the aforementioned suspension bridge. Everyone will be asked if they're comfortable continuing because there is an escape route for those unwilling. I felt surprisingly on edge, I'll be honest, but if you've made it up to here, trust me, you'll be fine the rest of the time. Having said that, the bridge was something else. It was less about the fact that you were walking on these narrow wood slabs and more that the entire bridge would sway back and forth so friggin' easily. You could hear it in my voice just how frightened I was by all this.
Oh my fuck. The movement is actually ridiculous. Oh my god. This is definitely one of the scariest things I've ever done. Oh, the shaking is like too much. This is crazy as hell.
No doubt, the bridge was a highlight of the tour with some of the most adrenaline and best scenery thus far. Once you make it to your second fin, you'll turn a corner just like you did before, but this one is much more chill in my opinion. You'll conquer some physically challenging rock scrambles thereafter, but nothing overly scary. Or maybe I was just numb at this point, who knows. You'll be told to stop at the base of an optional vertical climb that I briefly mentioned earlier. This was something I was originally going to pass on, but our guide Jules knew, judging by how I'd done thus far, that I could and should do it. Those who decide not to take on this challenge can enjoy a short lunch break with a spectacular view of some distant mountains. The view was actually what enticed me to get to the top of this fin, and by doing so, I climbed up the most strenuous and technically difficult rungs built for this Via Ferrata. And remember when I said this was all vertical? Well, that wasn't entirely true. A portion towards the top features an overhang that requires you to go past 90 degrees. This, genuinely, was petrifying to me.
Oh my god.
Good job, you got it. You got like 2 steps and then it gets easy. Nice. There you go. He's kind of over the hard part now. The hard part is...
That was ridiculous.
pretty short, but you do have like a 50-foot climb to get to it.
Oh, and it's thin up here too. Damn. Oh.
If the climb wasn't enough, the top of this fin is super thin, and had I known that before agreeing to this, I probably wouldn't have done this. That said, the views speak for themselves. I do believe it was worth it. Probably the best scenery the entire way through the tour, if not top 3, but just the way there was an equal emphasis on the rock formations and the mountains was outstanding. It was a little hard to enjoy with my heart still pounding out of my chest though. I realized looking back at this footage, it was just a beautiful scene and moment. Following our short break at the top was maybe the single most horrific thing I did that day, and that was climb down the iron rungs, once again including a beyond vertical segment towards the top. Like I said earlier, anytime you're forced to look down at your feet so that you're able to take the right steps, you're also staring directly into a great big drop off. I remember that wave of relief when I got to the bottom, thinking never again, but that was totally epic.
Oh, my shaky breath right now.
You made it.
Oh, thank God. Whew.
Your legs were shaking there for a while.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, ooh.
Let me go. Maybe the scariest thing I've ever done. I don't know. It's a contender for sure.
Once your group continues, you'll be faced with one last narrow walk alongside a cliff, which is the final section that I found to be objectively scary, though after everything I'd done, this was more of a cakewalk than one might expect from seeing the footage. There's some ordinary rock scrambling to follow, and then one last corner you traverse before connecting with the traditional dirt trail, concluding your experience on the Via Ferrata. That said, you aren't quite done yet. There is still one more view to look forward to, and it's a good one too. Getting to it is also optional, but it's very easy going, and I think it'd be silly to skip this if you've made it this far. While I think I prefer the summit of the fin I had just climbed to the view here, this was still incredibly picturesque as you see the distant rock formations with the mountains boxing you in on all sides. It would be a glorious sight taking Nelson Rocks out of the picture, but with it, the area is just so unique. You'll conclude on a windy dirt road at the bottom where there will most likely be someone waiting to drive you down to the parking lot. Enjoy the forestry one more time before ending up where you started, summing up this unforgettable West Virginia staple.
Well, we're back where we started, the car, and let me just say that was literally one of the most incredible outdoorsy experiences I have ever had. The scenery was great, but what really made that for me, that was a type of hike, I guess you can call it, that I've just never experienced before. And after doing that, I'm definitely gonna have to put some other Via Ferratas on my to-do list. Hopefully they aren't more crazy than that was though, because that was definitely pushing my limits at times. Shout out to our guide, Jules, you were amazing. Usually when I go on tours, I can just tell if they're trying to put on this fake personality or if they're genuinely happy to be there, down to earth, and she was one of those people, so I really appreciated that. Yeah, if you're anywhere in West Virginia, that is absolutely incredible. I would highly recommend it. Stay tuned, we are currently heading to Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. I will see you guys there. Peace out.